Okay, Sam Herder dropped his biggest surprises and biggest disappointments of the 2024 season, and we are going to be looking at it. Now, I already kind of looked through the article, and I kind of agree with his surprises are not surprising, and his disappointments are not disappointing. Now, I'm not going to show the article because if you guys want to look at it, you guys can go read it. And I'm not going to show what he said about it, but I'm going to talk about some of his biggest surprises. One of his biggest surprises on there was UC Davis. UC Davis, I 100% was a big. Well, I don't even want to say that. UC Davis was a surprise. Biggest surprise, I don't know about that. I expected UC Davis to be good. I was somebody who felt like UC Davis should have been good last year. Well, they were decently good last year, but I thought they should have been a playoff team last year. They got cheated out of the playoffs. Somebody else made it. Sac State made it even after UC Davis had just beat them in their rivalry game. So from that standpoint, I don't necessarily agree with that. But they were a surprise in terms of being a highly seeded team, and Land Larson, Miles Hastings, some of the players that they had on their squad played really well last year. So good from that standpoint. Big surprise, UC Davis. Biggest surprise, I don't know about biggest surprise, but they were a big surprise to a lot of people for them to be playing as late in the season as they were playing, being seeded where they were. So I agree with that one. Biggest surprise, not necessarily. Another one on there was Mercer. Biggest surprise being Mercer. They had a really good defensive team, took away the ball at a high rate, played good football, not great football. They held teams to low scoring totals, but their offense was able to do some things. Mercer definitely surprised me. I don't even know where Mercer's at. A lot of those like Mercers and Campbells and some of those smaller schools, it's hard to tell where they're at. I think Mercer might be in like Georgia. They play in the SoCon. I have no idea where Mercer's at, but you guys can let me know. They're definitely a surprise to me. They were a seeded team this year. I think they were the 7th or 8th seed, but they got a seed this year, and I guess their final ranking was number 8. I can't remember what their seed was. You say it in here. They were a seed though. They played really good football, but then they ended up running into North Dakota State, and North Dakota State just boat raced them. But NDSU was definitely a surprise for me. I mean, Mercer was definitely not NDSU. Mercer was definitely a surprise for me. I didn't foresee them doing that. Now, this is an interesting one. Sam Herder has Rhode Island on here as one of his biggest surprises, and I wouldn't say Rhode Island is a big surprise, Sam. Personally, I would not say Rhode Island is a big surprise. The reason I wouldn't say that is because although they had a really good regular season, they ran the table, were undefeated against the FCS for a long time, lost their first FCS game to Delaware. I think their schedule was cupcake. I don't think you can say it's a surprise. I mean, sure, you can say it's a surprise for Rhode Island to be there, but I think when you look at their schedule and see who they have been playing against, and you look at Rhode Island's roster opposed to somebody else's roster, I think you look at them and say they should be a pretty decent team this year, especially considering they weren't playing super stiff competition in that CAA. They were playing some of the bottom feeders of the CAA, and they were able to really beat up on them. So, I don't think they're a surprise for them to be there. I think the only reason you say it's a surprise is because of their 2023 record. You look at how they were in 2023 and then look at how they were in 2024. From that standpoint, yes, it's a surprise. But from looking at their schedule and seeing who they were playing against, I don't think it's a surprise. Another one on here of the biggest surprises is ACU. I would say this about Abilene Christian. I think the whole UAC was a big surprise for me. Even Southern Utah not making the playoffs, having one of the leading rushers in the country on their team, that's a big surprise. Tarhi Lamson, he was a Walter Payton Award finalist. You got ACU being a playoff team. You got, I'm going blank, Tarleton being a playoff team. You got, what's that last UAC team I'm thinking about? Eastern Kentucky being a playoff team. They had 3 playoff teams this year. And this is a conference that took teams from the OVC Big South, took teams from the Big Sky, took teams from, the Southland. They kind of took a bunch of teams from a bunch of different conferences, teams that were looking to leave their conference to come to a better conference, and form this United Athletic Conference. And they didn't just get 3 teams in the playoffs. They got teams that got into the playoffs and advanced to the next round and were very, very competitive at that. Abilene Christian was very competitive. They were not an easy out. Tarleton was not an easy out. They had a receiver, Darius Clemens, who went absolutely stupid against South Dakota, who made it to the semifinals. So, when you look at the United Athletic Conference, I see Abilene Christian on there, but I'm going to give it to the entire United Athletic Conference. They absolutely balled out and showed showed why they deserve some respect in the FCS. So those were 4 of his biggest surprises. Biggest disappointments. Number 1, I mean, he doesn't have them numbered, but at the top of this list is Sacramento State with a preseason ranking of number 8. I mean, I don't think anybody saw Sacramento State being as bad as they were. I mean, couldn't get a stop on defense. Offensively, they were pretty good, but their defense just so bad. Not enough playmakers on offense. Obviously, Carson Conklin was a great player. Is a great player at Sac State and is a really good young quarterback that has, could have won, Big Sky Rookie of the Year, Big Sky Freshman of the Year last year. But they have good pieces. I don't think they have enough good pieces. They had Marshall Martin previously. They had some receivers that could make things happen, and they had some talent in the backfield. They had a lot of pieces, and their offensive line was good. I think now the talent has been falling at Sacramento State until you see what you saw this year. They were a playoff team, played in the quarterfinals in 2023, or in the second round of the playoffs in 2023, and then this year, they can't even, barely win a Big Sky game. 3-9 overall record. I mean, it was just bad for Sac State, and they're looking on the up and up now with some of the things that are going on in Sac State, looking to go to the Pac-12, looking to build a new stadium, all those NIL commitments, new head coach with a flashy offense. I mean, things are looking good at Sac State, but I would definitely agree with Sam Herder that they were one of the biggest disappointments. In my mind, probably the biggest disappointment because I covered the Big Sky Conference. So, I was looking at them and just like, man, like they looked the part. And early on in the season, some of their defensive statistics looked good. But then you watch them and it's like the numbers show and what you see on film, it just doesn't compute. So you guys, Sac State for sure. I'm going to talk about one more team on the biggest disappointments because this is a team that I thought would be pretty good. It was a preseason pick for a potential UAC championship berth, UAC, conference championship. They didn't live up to that hype. It's Central Arkansas, man. Central Arkansas had a really good running back on their team, an All-American running back. And I just don't understand why they couldn't get things right. I'm trying to shun Derek Powell at Central Arkansas was probably the best FCS running back next to Kayvon Britton last year. Those two were at the top of the list. I'm looking at one at Tarleton, looking at one at Abilene, or one at Central Arkansas, and thinking, these are going to be the 2 best teams in the UAC. I thought, they played the last game of the season, and I thought the UAC conference title would come down to Central Arkansas versus Tarleton State in that final game of the season, and it just wasn't the case. Central Arkansas was they were decent this year, but they finished 6-6 overall and never really looked like the dominant Central Arkansas that I expected to see. They played the first game of the season they played against that's Tarleton I'm thinking of, but I 100% agree with UAC the Central Arkansas being a big disappointment. I thought they were going to dominate the UAC. I thought they were going to be one of the better teams in the UAC and just never materialized. So what do you guys think about some of the biggest surprises and biggest disappointments that Sam Herder put out there? You guys can go read the full article. I'll share my screen right now. Here's the article right here, biggest surprises and disappointments of the 2024 FCS season. So you guys can go check that out, written by Sam Herder, the top insider and FCS reporter for FCS college football for Hero Sports. So definitely go check that article out, and I will move on.